Good afternoon, Facebook. Come on in. We are live. Welcome, 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 welcome. I am so excited to have you. Of course, you know what I'm doing. I am setting up Graceful Journey to jump on this live right quick. Hello. Hey, Zay. How you doing, brother? Come on in. We are going live. We are here and we are live. I'm having some issues with connecting my Graceful Journey page, but let's see where we are. It's good to see you, Xavier. Are you doing okay? So I'm having a little issues with connecting to my live. Hey, brother, it's so good to see you. How is the family? How's everybody doing? How's everything going in your world? It is so good to see you. I'm just waiting just a couple seconds so that we can get. Okay, so it looks like my internet is not connecting on my phone. It's okay. Welcome. Hello, hello. Xavier, is it cold in Atlanta? It is cold in Dallas. You're so welcome. I am so glad to hear that everybody is doing well. Blessings to you. I see all the wonderful work that you are doing out there with young men in the Atlanta area, young boys, and being a really good role model for them. And I just want to say thank you for all the wonderful, wonderful work that you are doing. If there's anything that I can ever do for you, you just let me know because I am here and I am available to help in any way that I can. We are responsible for our future, right? We are the ones that's going to have to lay the really good foundation so that our young people can have something to as a launching pad. We have to set that up for them. So um, yeah, it's cold here in Dallas. I can't believe it. We're getting a cold stitch. So we're just going to wait a couple more minutes. I am so thankful for this opportunity to sit in front of you on today and talk about a subject that a lot of us really don't want to talk about, and that is setting healthy boundaries with our family members. We are coming up on the holiday season, and there are so many family dynamics that go into the holidays. Some people, and please be mindful that I am very mindful of the fact that not everyone has family to go home to, and that sometimes we've had to create our own families in order to be a part of a nuclear unit that we feel is going to be impactful on the way that we see ourselves and in the way that we are interacting with family. And so I'm completely aware of that. And today we are not here to judge what type of family you're in or what type of familiar structure you've created for yourself, but we are going to talk about self care from a place of setting healthy boundaries for your relatives, because oftentimes it's the people that are closest to us that we have the most difficult times with creating a healthy boundary with. It's not the guy on the street. Oftentimes it's not the people that we work with. Sometimes it can be the people that we work for, but we have an easier time sometimes setting boundaries for people that we don't know as opposed to the people that we know, because there's this expectation that I'm supposed to act and behave in a certain way with my family because they are my family. And so when we feel that way, we go about sometimes putting ourselves in toxic situations with our family members that we know we are uncomfortable with and we are afraid to speak on or speak about. So I am going to have a little talk. Hey, Tanya, how are you? We're going to talk about setting these boundaries and why this is an act of self care, right? Setting healthy boundaries with anyone, but especially with relatives, is also a very intimate act of self care, knowing when to say when, knowing whether or not you should participate in this year's family activities, not feeling guilty if you decide that maybe this year I'm finding another tradition that works best for you, um, and may not include your family. How does that play and how does that interact with with who you are? So come on in. We have a couple more minutes. Why don't the two of you share this on your page? Okay, Zay and Tanya, share this on your page. Invite somebody to come into this free session, because I guarantee you that somebody in your friend group, in your social group, in your connecting group is asking themselves the question, should I go to the family function this year? I don't have a really good relationship with this person or that person or these people or those people. Should I put myself into that environment for the sake of the family so that people won't think one way of me or another? Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, Tanya. Please share this on your page. I'm going to try again hooking up my Graceful Journey page before I get started. And I don't know why my live video won't start. Okay, so it's still telling me that it's having internet connection. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm gonna get started because it's 6 minutes after 1 my time, and I want you to have some opportunity to go back and enjoy your lunch and share it, and maybe put some comments. If you have some questions that you would like for me to answer, please put it in that comment section, and I will be more than happy to answer those questions for you. So one of the things that I talked about, I think it was last week, about setting healthy, about self-care. That's what I talked about last week. We went in depth about self-care and what that really looked like. I wanted to give the audience an opportunity to know that self-care was something that was more than just what was going on the surface. And that oftentimes when we think about taking care of ourselves, we think about things like taking vacation, taking time off of work, having a massage, having a pedicure or a manicure, maybe going out to eat a good dinner, maybe spending some quiet time at home. And all of those things are important. They are acts of self-care. But one of the things that we forget to care about when we talk about caring for ourselves is we oftentimes forget to care about both our mental and emotional states. And we have to find ways. One of the things that we talked about last time was addressing trauma, going to therapy and addressing trauma and seeing what that is. All of us at some point have experienced some sort of traumatic incident, and that trauma is not just what happens to you, it's also what doesn't happen to you or for you. So in terms of neglect, that is also a traumatic experience. And so when we think of trauma a lot, we often think about things that can happen to us. We think about assault, molestation, abuse of some sort of physical abuse, and those things happen to us, and those things are traumatic. But also things that do not happen for us, that's nurturing, care, that's emotional connectivity. All those things that don't happen for us is also considered a trauma, right? So we talked about addressing trauma. We also talked about setting healthy boundaries, that knowing when to say when and when to say no, and knowing one's own self. Hi, Amber. And having that knowledge and that knowing of who you are and setting boundaries for yourself is an act of self-care. Now we're going to talk about, how do we set boundaries for family members, right? What happens when we feel as though there is a family member or family members that we feel are toxic for us, right? And there's a toxic relationship, and there's a history of the relationship being toxic with us in this particular individual. How do we handle that as we are moving forward into the holiday season? Because sometimes there is a difficult relationship that exists between you and another person, and nobody knows about it because it's really not tradition to really talk about it. We don't have that opportunity oftentimes to air our grievances with family members, especially depending on who it is. When you talk about your parents, or you talk about grandparents, or you talk about people who raised you, how do we create a healthy environment for us to have these conversations? And if the environment has not been created, then what are our next steps? Should I feel obligated to participate in family activities when I know that there is going to be a relative there or relatives there, or that my family dynamic in and of itself is toxic, and there is just no cohesiveness? There's always been arguing or fussing or clamor, or there's been this unspoken discord between relatives that has caused a really uncomfortable space with the rest of us. Do I have to participate in that? My answer to you today is no. Simple. No, you do not. And a part of understanding and creating and having and thinking about self-care and self-awareness is setting boundaries for your relatives. So no, you do not have to go into very unhealthy spaces with relatives where you know that the environment is going to create some sort of mental or emotional burden on you. If you are leaving family activities and you find yourself both mentally and emotionally drained, you feel that you have been attacked in one way or another. Now, your perception is your reality. No one can tell you that you weren't attacked or that this person didn't mean it in that way. They may not have, but it really depends on how you are receiving it, right? So that's really what determines just your reality. Your reality, your perception is based, your reality is based on your perception. So whether they meant to have that slick remark or whether they meant to say the thing in the way that they said it doesn't mean it did not impact you and it did not hurt you in a way that is tangible to you and you can feel it emotionally, right? So you find yourself leaving family activities, you're spent, you feel as though it was a waste of time. You're saying things like, I never should have gone. I knew that this was going to happen. There's always some sense of arguing, or there's something that's being said, something that's been brought up in the past. There's real passive aggressive behavior. And now you're asking yourself, should I participate in family activities? And the answer to that question is no. I do not recommend that you put yourself in emotional harm. It's almost like kind of stepping out in front of a bus. And here in a little bit, though, I am going to tell you that just because I am encouraging you not to put yourself in a situation where you feel the environment is toxic, it does not mean that it exempts you from being responsible for addressing conflict, right? So there is a thin line between properly addressing and resolving conflict and being avoiding, right? Because we can exhibit avoidance behaviors by saying, well, I jumped on a live and Tori told me that I didn't have to go and be in a toxic environment with my family. I can just ignore them and never have anything to do with them. No, Tori didn't say that. Tori said that you don't have to feel obligated to place yourself in any sort of situation, environment, even if it's with your family, that is toxic and harmful to you. Tori did not say that you should be avoiding addressing conflict in a very healthy way. Conflict resolution often is very necessary, right? So you can't keep avoiding situations because that becomes passive aggressive behavior, and that in and of itself can be toxic to the environment. So you have to be aware of the fact that there is a thin line between avoiding toxicity and doing your due diligence to address conflict when necessary. And there are very healthy steps and approaches that you can take to addressing conflict. I would not suggest that you go to Thanksgiving dinner and when they're doing the prayers, because my family, folks want to pray around the table. That's our tradition. And when you get to doing the prayers, you hold your hand up and say, well, I have a problem with Uncle George. Okay, maybe that's not the way where that conflict needs to be resolved. But if you do have a problem with Uncle George, then it's probably a good opportunity, a good time, or finding a good time to say, hey, this is what my concern is and this is what my issue is. Oftentimes when we address conflict, we oftentimes do it with the expectation that the person on the other end will either A, want to talk about it or want to come to a resolve to it. And there are a lot of times when that's just not the case. Not everyone is taught that addressing conflict is actually a good thing. We oftentimes use avoidance and avoiding behaviors to not address certain things. And sometimes that's also a healthy thing. What I'm saying is there has to be some discernment in how you are addressing conflict. Sometimes, especially if this person is a perpetrator, and you may not want to address that person alone. You may want to take a third party. You may not ever have to address that person, but please know that your peace doesn't necessarily come from having to address conflict with a person that you feel has violated you, that you can come to a peaceful place within yourself without having to address that person. So the second thing I want to tell you is that we've seen a lot of things where people would say things like, well, that's your mom or your dad. You shouldn't feel that way. Well, that's not necessarily true, because when you have concerns with parents, and parents were once in an authoritative position in your life, it is very difficult to address conflict with them, or or to address the toxicity in the relationship with them. Parents can be toxic, right? And if you have a toxic relationship with your parents, it's probably started from a very young age, and that behavior has continued throughout your adulthood, right? And it still is necessary if it's your parents, and you feel that the relationship with your parents is toxic, and again you feel emotionally drained, you feel as though there's this heaviness and this weight that you feel both mentally and emotionally when you are in contact with your parents, then this may be something that you may not want to put yourself in. Setting that healthy boundary, even if it's with your parents, is going to be necessary when you talk about caring for yourself, caring for your mental wellness, caring for your mental health. It's going to be necessary to do that. Even with parents, there should be no obligation to interact with them or to put yourself in a vulnerable position with them if you feel as though they've been the ones that has contributed to some sort of harm or hurt for you. Ultimately, in understanding these dynamics, and even knowing when enough is enough, right? So I have some people that I'll talk to, and they'll say, okay, I can go to the family function, but I can't stay all day. Well, when you go with the intent of spending as much time as you can, maybe an hour, maybe 30 minutes. You spend that time, and then you make sure that you have other plans to leave and go someplace else. I think the bottom line to this is that you shouldn't feel some sense of obligation to engage with your family if you feel as though those relationships are toxic for you. Go where you are appreciated and not tolerated, right? So if you feel like, hey, it's just never been a cohesive space for me, and I don't feel like this is something that is going to be helpful for me, then you have to find groups where you feel that you are going to be appreciated and welcomed in that space in a very healthy way. And sometimes we don't realize that our family oftentimes can also not be healthy for us, and it's okay. At some point you're going to have to hear this, that it's okay to set those boundaries even with your relatives, that your relatives don't have a pass, they don't have this all access pass to your emotional and mental health and wellness just because they are relatives, right? Well, just because it's your mom, it doesn't mean that she gets to be condescending. It doesn't mean that she gets to be a mean girl to you because it's your mom. Nobody should have that all access pass to you because they're related to you, because, we're cousins, because we're friends. No, it doesn't work that way. You still have to create very healthy boundaries for people in your life and know when to say when, not feeling guilty for protecting your mental health and your emotional wellness. You have to be willing to, and oftentimes, unfortunately, I find that people oftentimes have to defend. They feel as though that they have to defend their decision to not be in spaces with relatives that they feel are harmful, and that feeling is normal. It's normal to feel that way because there is almost an expectation that we have that we're supposed to want to be around our family. We're supposed to want to share with them or be around them. And so there's this internal sense of obligation that if I don't do it, then what are they going to think of me? What if I separate myself? Then what does that say of me if I'm choosing not to be around my family? Well, people are going to have a perception of you regardless. So you can go there and they will still have a perception of you, and you not being there won't change that because people's perceptions is their reality. And sometimes we try to defend or we try to correct another person's perception of us, and we can't do that. The only thing we can do is just kind of live, create your own boundary, be very clear in the stance that you take with your family and saying, this is not a healthy environment for me, so I'm choosing not to participate in it. You have every right to do that. So as the holidays are coming up, I don't want you to feel this sense of obligation to have to engage in family circles and family units that has been anything less than family. If you don't feel welcomed, if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel your children are safe, right? You do not have to engage in these environments in order to please anybody who may think or feel otherwise. Take the opportunity to create new memories new traditions, right? So maybe once before you would go travel and see all the family, and you're saying that doesn't work for me anymore. Create a new tradition. Maybe I've seen Friendsgiving, and I've seen Christmas parties with friends and coworkers and other people, right? And so you can create a brand new tradition for yourself that would allow you to keep both your mental and your emotional states very, very healthy. And sometimes creating new things is oftentimes what's best for us, right? Not to meander and not to become comfortable, because sometimes it can be very comfortable to be around family that you feel is harmful to you. And because you don't want to disrupt your own inner comfort, you stay there and you accept behaviors from people that you don't have to accept it from, not even your family. Okay. So during this holiday season, just be mindful that you can create new traditions for yourself, that you do not have to feel obligated to interject yourself into circles and into gatherings that you don't feel comfortable, that you may feel is toxic, and that you can set boundaries for relatives. They are not exempt from boundaries. I know, and again, I'm very much aware that for some of us, you may not have family that's in the area with you. You're feeling a sense of loneliness. I will tell you, reach out. Sometimes it's the first step of reaching out to someone who may be a new friend in the area. If you moved into a new area, I'm a mover, so I've moved quite a bit over the last couple years, and I will tell you that I have been able to have some really, really good meetings and with people who have become family for me. Right? They've opened up their arms to me. They've made me feel welcomed. They've created a space for me, and it proved to be very beneficial in how I've set up a safe space for myself, because I've lived away from family for so long. And so just a reminder that you can do it. And if you feel like you can't, and you feel like you want to reach out and you want to talk some more about it, why don't you go to my website, www.gracefuljourneycounseling.com. You can either click that request appointment button at the bottom of the page, or if you have a question, yes, you can go ahead and send me an email. Healthy boundaries are heaven sent. Yes, they are, Dana. And a lot of times and here's the thing about creating boundaries. I like to remind people that the purpose of creating boundaries is not to create walls, but fences or gates, right? You want to create a gate or a fence, because when you create a wall keeps everything out, right? But it also becomes a prisoner and it keeps you in. But when you create fences, which is what a healthy boundary is, it allows you to enact your sense of discernment, and you can decide what goes in and you can decide what comes out, right? When you build fences, these are what healthy boundaries are. Healthy boundaries are not walls. They are not things to use to imprison you within your own circle and to keep everything out. That's not the purpose of creating a boundary. A boundary, I want you to envision it to be more like a fence. When there is a fence, there is protection, but there's also a space that allows you to let things in and let things out. And when we engage with people, whether it be relatives, whether it be coworkers, whether it be strangers, you always have to have your discernment up. That discernment is what lets you know whether or not something is healthy, is whether or not it's healthy to let someone in, and to know even for yourself when you are harboring things on the inside that you need to let out. I felt that I needed to say that, because oftentimes when we discuss boundaries, people use that as an opportunity to say, well, this is why I don't fool with people. Well, the truth of the matter is that no one is an island, and we're not set up to live alone. That's not the way we're set up. That's not the way human development is. That's not the way healthy human cultivation works. How it works is that you have to build a fence. You should be very discerning on who you let in. But when you do your own self-assessment, there are some things that you may be holding in that it's time for you to open up the gate and let it out. If you're holding in bitterness, if you're holding in past hurt, if you're holding in shame, if you're holding in regret, there are some things that if you are not careful, they can reside on the inside of you and be eating away at you, and you don't even know that you need to let the gate open and let that stuff out. So a part of building boundaries is not just about what you let in, is to be very cognizant that there are going to be some times where you're going to have to do some self-evaluation and let some stuff out. Okay, so I felt like I needed to say that when we talk about building boundaries and creating boundaries, that these are not walls, these are gates that require discernment so that you can know what you should let in, but you should also be very much aware of what you should let out. Dana, I miss you too. I miss ATL. I will be there soon. I am going to come out there soon. I have some things in the works that I am so excited about. So I'll be out in ATL soon. It is now 25 minutes past the hour. This has been Therapist Tori on your Therapy Thursday. I got you some free stuff, some free information. If you need me or if you know somebody who does, I am in Dallas, and I also do e-therapy as well, so I can do sessions online, particularly if you are in the state of Texas. That's also available. But if you have any questions, do me a favor. Everybody that is listening to this video, would you please share this video on your page? Because I guarantee you that someone is coming up on the holiday season and they are nervous and they are experiencing anxiety and in many cases depression about how they should handle their family with this coming up holiday season. And they need some pointers and some tips because somebody is feeling guilty and shame that they don't really want to hang out with their family, but they don't know why and they don't know how to express it. And so I hope this information is going to be helpful. So that is my time. I thank you so much for joining me. This is always so good to get with you guys on this Thursday afternoon. I still have clients to go, right? So I have an afternoon of clients that I have to see, and I'm so thankful. Every day I come into my office and I'm so thankful that my clients keep showing up, and I'm thankful that you keep showing up as well. So my aunt Yvette, she's an LCSW, and she said, if you have an idea of typical triggers during the holidays and family gatherings, it's a good idea to practice setting boundaries in a safe space with your therapist and or supportive friends prior to and in preparation for family gatherings. Absolutely. So what she's basically saying is that if you know that there's certain things that can trigger you around the holiday, create a safe space. It's important that you can create a safe space right in your therapy sessions with families, with somebody who can give you support so that you can know kind of what you're going to expect when you get there, right? So if you know you go to your mom's house and you know she's condescending or she says passive aggressive things, when you go to therapy, those are the things that you can bring up in your therapy session so that you and your therapist can create a real safe space for you. So you'll know, okay, when this happens, this is what I will do. This is how I'm going to react when this happens. Maybe I say something, maybe I don't. Maybe I leave the room. Maybe I cut the visit short. Whatever it is, you can create your safe space right in your therapeutic environment so that you can know how you are going to react and what your interactions are going to be once you get into that environment that triggers you. So thank you so much, Auntie Yvette, for that wonderful, wonderful word of advice. Because a lot of times what triggers us so much is that we don't have a plan of action for when we are going into these situations. You remember back in the day, I remember I'll be like, man, if she say this to me, I'm going off, right? Not knowing that or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to say that, not really knowing at the time that was actually a coping mechanism that we used to do, and not knowing that that's what that was, that we were anticipating what the trigger would be, so that when we got into that situation, we wouldn't necessarily be responding to the trigger. We wouldn't be reacting to the trigger, but we would have a response to the trigger, because there's two separate things. Having a response and reacting are two totally different things. And oftentimes when we don't know what to expect when we get into an environment, we tend to react as opposed to responding. So what my aunt is saying is that if you practice these safe spaces with your therapist or with your support group or with your friends, you'll find that you'll be doing less reacting and more responding, which is going to get you better results. Auntie, am I correct in that? Is that what you were saying? That's kind of what I picked up. So I am so thankful, you guys, for joining me today. And if there's anything else, the comment section on this video is always going to be available for you to go ahead and responses versus reactions, right? Because when you go into an environment prepared, when you go into an environment understanding your triggers, you will be more likely to respond as opposed to reacting. Reactions just remind us that we have not prepared. We just kind of flying off the handle. This is what you said, and this is what I'm going to do. And so we want to be sure that we have responses instead of reactions to everything. Okay, so that's a really good point. This comment section will always be open on this video. Please be sure to share it on your page if you feel so led. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I had such a wonderful day on Therapy Thursday. If you have any ideas and some things you want me to address on a future Therapy Thursday, why don't you shoot me a DM, put it in the inbox, and I'll go with it. Okay. Thank y'all so much. It's a 1:31. I will talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again.